I find myself like an old man screaming, "Get off my lawn!" to these people with their ADPs with some of these rookies. It's like, guys, have you what are you in a 2-ball league? Where there's 2 footballs on the field? Like, the Chicago Bears guys like Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore, they can't possibly all be top 30 wide receivers in Chicago this year, yet they are ADP wise.
Yeah. Roma Dunze is an interesting one. He's wide receiver 40-ish, pick 90-ish, aggregate. Underdog, he's just going too high. That's just, that's crazy, right?
Yeah, I'm talking Underdog here.
Yeah. CBS has him at 176 overall. That, by the way, that's too low. CBS has him at 170. That's too low, guys. All right. He's he can be a dominant outside X receiver. I think touchdown upside is really, really good. And for me, I just think Odunze is a player that if we're just playing it right down the middle, my projections, and I'm calling my projections here for 2024, have got Roma Odunze at 722 yards, up to 1,000 yards, and 5 to 7 touchdowns. I think that's a very fair projection for him. I think Odunze is going to be the odd man out. DJ Moore should, by year's end, be the top wide receiver, should be. But I'm telling you, do not be surprised if early on Keenan Allen dominates the touches early on, at least, before DJ Moore takes over in the second half.
That's the quarterback best friend phenomenon there, James.
I think so. When we're talking short to intermediate area of the field, especially if they're going to kick Keenan Allen inside. If Odunze is playing X and DJ Moore is playing flanker slot, and then you've really got Keenan Allen there playing slot flanker, I think early on, I think Keenan Allen's going to still separate at a high level and become a big target for Caleb Williams, at least early on.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
All right, guys, welcome back in. It's the Fantasy Points podcast. Brian Drake, John Hansen, and our guest this week, James Coe of Reception Perception. Again, follow him on all the social platforms at James D. Coe. All right, so let's talk a little fantasy here, James, and I'm going to start with what Guru is maybe going against the grain with. And years ago, we talked about how old we all are, and back in the day, it was a no-brainer. First round of a fantasy draft, you're taking a running back. Second round, you're taking a running back. When you're thinking of taking another position, F that, you're taking another running back. It's kind of switched these days. Okay. If you play on Underdog, everyone's wide receiver drunk. They're taking, fifth string wide receivers, before they're taking their second running back. But Guru, John, you're talking about taking a running back in the first round. You're back, baby. You got 4 guys, Bijan, Brees, Jahmyr Gibbs, and JT, who you're willing to take in the first round. So I want to bounce this off you guys here. See what our guest James thinks about going RB in round 1.
Well, James, do you want to comment on that? Because, I've talked about that quite a bit here on this pod. I just see an opportunity. And by the way, for the record, you and I didn't work together last summer. I was more into the wideouts and more against the running backs in round 1 than I ever have been in my entire life. And that, by the way, was a pretty good call overall. But I just see such an opportunity. The way the board lands and all that, I understand we want that number 1 alpha wide out, but I think we can still form a really good receiver group if we go running back in round 1. And I just think simply that forget about CMC. Never, no chance, no how. I'm taking him at his age. But come on, Bijan Robinson, Brees Hall, Johnny Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs. I know Taylor's had a little bit of a rough couple of years here, but I'm calling those the flawless 4, and I'm going for it as my anchor running back, most likely in Jahmyr Gibbs. I think I mentioned him. He's like the last man standing there if I'm at the end of round 1. I'm not saying I'll do it 100% of the time, but probably 80% of the time this year, James, I'm going to go running back in round 1.
So it's interesting to me when you said the big 4, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm throwing CMC into the mix, and I'm kicking Jahmyr Gibbs to the curb out of the 4. Right. Okay.
You could easily be right. You probably will be right, but I am a major ageist, and even that injury that McCaffrey suffered last year, it did kind of scare me a little bit. He was good in the Super Bowl and the playoffs, but he did have 3 weeks to rest.
So I think for CMC, I hear what you're saying. I won't take him 1.1 for a very stupid reason. Okay, I know I just got done saying, oh, I'm very well researched. This is a stupid take, but I'm going to stick by it. He's the consensus overall 1.1. Okay.
Yeah.
When was the last time the consensus 1.1 actually was the 1.1?
I honestly John
cannot
Taylor
remember.
a couple years ago.
I mean, exactly, right? So it just, to me, when you say CMC is the consensus 1.1 and it never happens, right? It never happens.
Yeah.
Why do we continue to then say, well, if I got the number one pick, I'm going to take CMC 1.1? And again, I understand there's, position flexibility and all those kind of things. You could get some really good wide receivers late, which is what John's saying, which I totally agree with. But still, though, let's say CMC fell to you at 3. You're taking him there. If he falls to you at 4, you're auto picking. 5, auto picking. It's the best pick of the draft, CMC at 5. Okay. So I still see him as a top pick, as a top 5 pick. I just won't take him 1.1. Okay. I mean,
yeah.
And maybe I'm splitting hairs here by saying, yeah, I'll take him at 1.3. Okay. I don't know. Anyways, so when I look at the big 4, and I'm going to throw CMC into the mix. Okay. And the reason I love what you're saying here, right? CMC, Brees, Bijan, JT, Saquon. Okay. Those are the 5 top guys for me. All right. Outside of those top 5, and I understand the appeal, there's a huge drop off in anticipated usage, and guys that are challenging for touches, right? And yet their ADPs are still bundled. Like, that's the problem for me. Even though there's a huge drop off in security, there's not a huge drop off in ADP, right? When we're talking about Kyren Williams, the same people that are telling you that running backs are disposable, that running backs don't matter, they're the same people telling you that Kyren Williams is a great player. That to me is insane. Yeah. Kyren Williams is a good player in a great system. He's in a great system. I think Blake Corum is going to challenge for touches. I think Blake Corum could legitimately outplay Kyren Williams. And it could be a really murky 50-50 situation as the year wears on. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Kyren Williams is a one-hit wonder. Not at all.
Yeah.
Right? Derrick Henry, the age, the usage, I'm scared. Travis Etienne is a good player, and probably I like his, overall safety net. Devin Achane is right in that ADP group too. It's like, wait, did we just forget about Raheem Mostert? Like, what's going on here? Again, Isaiah Pacheco, the games that Andy Reid plays with his running backs and usage, it's like, look, I like Isaiah Pacheco, but I don't love him. What's his usage in the passing game? I don't think it's going to be very high, right? So you're starting to really look at ADP and say, well, wait a second. All these guys are still bundled tightly. And yet, when you get outside of Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, usage and talent really starts to drop off quite a bit, man.
Big
and
time.
so that's why I really like what you're saying in regards to those 5, maybe 6 guys in the first round. Go get those guys, because guys are going to be so thirsty. Your draft mates are going to be so thirsty for wide receivers. I like the idea of taking a power running back there in the first round.
All right, there you go. We're on the same page. How about another little phenomenon going on? I don't know how much of it you've noticed, but and it's ironic because, again, I am a guy who, when I make mistakes, I'm overrating young players, rookies. I'm always chasing that breakout. Yet I find myself like an old man screaming, "Get off my lawn!" to these people with their ADPs, with some of these rookies. It's like, guys, have you what are you, in a 2-ball league, where there's 2 footballs on the field? Like, the Chicago Bears guys, like Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore, they can't possibly all be top 30 wide receivers in Chicago this year, yet they are ADP wise.
Yeah. Roma Dunze is an interesting one. He's wide receiver 40-ish, pick 90-ish, aggregate. Underdog, he's just going too high. That's just, that's crazy, right?
Yeah, I'm talking underdog here.
Yeah. CBS has him at 176 overall. That, by the way, that's too low. CBS has him at 170. That's too low, guys. All right. He's he can be a dominant outside X receiver. I think touchdown upside is really, really good. And for me, I just think Odunze is a player that, if we're just playing it right down the middle, my projections, and I'm calling my projections here for 2024, have got Roma Odunze at 722 yards, up to 1,000 yards, and 5 to 7 touchdowns. I think that's a very fair projection for him. It's higher than what Vegas has for him, by the way, too. And part of the problem is, how much are they going to throw the football? In 2022, they threw to wide receivers the second fewest times in the NFL, the fifth fewest overall, right? This number's obviously going to come up, guys. I get it. They've got three good to great wide receivers. They've drafted a quarterback that can actually legitimately throw the football. He's not a project, as much of a project passer as Justin Fields, so they're going to throw it. But they go from the second fewest targets to wide receivers in the NFL to what? The second most? No, that doesn't make sense, right?
They'll be middle of the pack.
Right, middle of the pack to me. That's exactly what I've projected them as somewhere in the middle of the pack there. And so for that reason, I think there's just not enough volume to sustain, to John's point, I don't think there's enough volume to sustain three top 30 wide receivers. I think Odunze is going to be the odd man out. DJ Moore should, by year's end, be the top wide receiver, should be. But I'm telling you, do not be surprised if early on Keenan Allen dominates the touches early on, at least, before DJ Moore takes over in the second half.
That's the quarterback best friend phenomenon there, James?
I think so. When we're talking short to intermediate area of the field, especially if they're going to kick Keenan Allen inside. Yeah. If Odunze is playing X and DJ Moore is playing flanker slot, and then you've really got Keenan Allen there playing slot flanker, I think early on, I think Keenan Allen's going to still separate at a high level and become a big target for Caleb Williams, at least early on.
We talked about taking a running back early to get him in the first round. Let's say you don't, okay? You go receiver, you come back in the third round. Well, there's a big man waiting for you in the middle of the third round. His name's Derrick Henry. RB9 coming off the board right now at Underdog, ADP of 32. Again, like I said, middle of round 3. Last year, he quietly ran for the second most yards in the league on a terrible Titans team behind a horrendous line. He had over 1,100 yards rushing, 12 rushing touchdowns. That was tied for fifth best. So now, James, he's moving to Baltimore, where he could see the lightest boxes he's probably ever gone against. They have a legitimate offensive line in front of him. And he's got Lamar Jackson, so you can't just key on Derrick Henry. We say it every year. Okay, this is the year Derrick Henry falls off the cliff. This is the year I'm out on Derrick Henry. But now, as he's a grandfather out there, it's like, I want to be in on Derrick Henry more than I ever have. But it doesn't make sense. Make it make sense to me, Mr. Coe.
Look, it's an interesting thought process. He's been double-digit touchdowns for 6 seasons in a row, and that's what you love. I think that part of his game, though, to me, when you're talking about having Lamar Jackson there, I would be surprised if he gets a double-digit touchdowns. I really would. He's never really been a big on checkdowns or targets, right? So that part of his game should stay about the same. I think he's going to see, probably 30-ish. 30 to 40 targets, and it's not a big number, but it should be it's normal for Derrick Henry. Last year, we did see a drop off in regards to, I think, efficiency, 4.2 yards per attempt last year. That was the lowest that he's had pretty much his entire career. So I think we're seeing a little bit of drop off in efficiency. He's obviously going to be 30 years old as we go into 2024. So that's a big time age cliff as well. Last year, he had 280, carries, which is actually a pretty light load for him overall. I can't do it. At that price, it's just, I don't know, man. Even if you go wide receiver heavy off the top, that probably means you're someone like John, who's a little bit of an ageist, and you're going to look at Derrick Henry at 30 and say, nah, I'm not doing it, So listen, if he falls to the 5th round, I'm a little bit more intrigued, but gosh, man, it is so hard for me to pull the trigger on a 30-year-old running back right now, especially when we're talking somewhere in the top five rounds of a fantasy draft. In the 5th round, I'm considering it. But in the 3rd, I'm probably not.
Believe it or not, James, somehow I have compartmentalized his age, and I'm just and the wear and tear, and I'm kind of looking at him will this work? Derrick Henry with Lamar Jackson for the Ravens. And I do think it will. I know their O-line's a little sus these days, as the kids say, but I'm more than fine with Henry this year, much to my surprise. I was actually a couple weekends ago. I was actually in his hometown. I was driving down in near Jacksonville, and I see a town. I think it's Yulee, Florida. I'm like, oh, home of Derrick Henry. I'm like, oh, there you go. There you go. There's a guy I underrated like 3 years in a row. Shout out to Derrick Henry. But I wanted to move on and ask you another question here. Things that are pressing, that things I'm most excited about. We're bouncing around just a little bit here with James Coe. But how about my quarterback pick this year? And I was pretty high on him last year. I probably give him a little bit more love than I think most people. I did a video on him. Mr. Jordan Love in Green Bay. What do you think? Was he for reals? I mean, I'm a yes on that. Of course, you probably remember Bo Melton. We had his father on the podcast
nice.
2 weeks ago, by the way, in this very podcast, Gary. And by the way, Gary, who I grew up with and, played a lot of sports with growing up, he fully signs off on Jordan Love being for reals and the NFC's Mahomes and an absolute baller. But what say James Coe?
I think he's got all the tools in the world to be a special player. He's got a great group of wide receivers. Maybe great is a little bit of an overstatement, but a very good group. Great depth. And so overall, I think it's a very good group. I think Jaden Reed's great. Dontavian Wicks is a very interesting young player. If Christian Watson can figure out his hamstrings, which I think is a big ask, he's certainly a weapon on the outside and a certified touchdown maker. And Romeo Doubs is kind of a little bit of a, rugged possession type of receiver, a player that I think a lot of teams would love to have just in terms of toughness, So I think that part of it is good, Okay, now that being said, is Jordan Love for real? When I hear that question, I think yes and no. So he's got the tools. He's got the weapons. I'm not a big Matt LaFleur guy, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. I think he is a frontline starter. I think he's probably a top 12 quarterback in this league. And that might sound a little low to some people who are real Jordan Love lovers, okay? Yeah. But can I just say, for the last 11 games of the season where he went absolutely just freaking banana pants. All right. We're talking 67% completion rate, 22 freaking touchdowns in 11 games, just 4 interceptions. He was awesome, bro. 263 passing yards per game as well. If you stretch that out into a season long, that's 4,500 yards, 37 total touchdowns. That's freaking amazing. Yeah. It's incredible numbers, right? Okay. Now that being said, look at his schedule, guys. Okay. There was almost no tough teams from a pass defense standpoint on his schedule the last 11 games of the season, man. It was crazy. Minnesota, he saw twice. That's a bottom 12 unit. Their pass defense was not good. Detroit, one of the worst in the league. Chargers, one of the worst in the league. Rams, one of the worst in the league. Tampa Bay, one of the worst in the league. Chicago, not that great either. Carolina was statistically good against the pass, but as we know, that's just because you could run on them all day long. I don't think they were good from a talent standpoint at all. Okay, so that's a lot of teams that are some of the worst pass defenses that we've seen in the league on the back end of his the last 11 games of the season. So I think his numbers were a little bit inflated, and so I'm a little bit torn. I'm not going 10 toes in on Jordan Love this year.
You're torn between two lovers, is what you are, and you're feeling like a fool.
Listen, I like him. I think, like I said, I like him a lot. But LaFleur's a guy that's going to run that rock, man. He's got 3 freaking running backs in that backfield now. And he's just, to me, I think going to try to establish the hell out the run. And so that will put some clampers, I think, on Jordan Love too. So if you're anticipating a top 5 finish for Jordan Love at the position, I'm not in on that. Okay. Right. I am just not in on that.
That's fair.
Okay. But
I
top 10-ish.
How about top 7?
Top 7? I'd have to analyze a little bit. That's still a little aggressive, but I think top 10 is very fair. So top 7, James, we're in the same ballpark.
Yeah. To your point, and again, I keep referencing this damn video because I only did one like long form video in the preseason. It was on Jordan Love, and I added up all the positives and all that. Oh, you could be damn sure that the schedule was a huge part of it. And you see the video. Well, guess what? It's still good. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's still good.
Okay.
You got Philly. Now their secondary has been completely revamped in Vic Fangio, so that could be a tough one. Indy secondaries was their weakness last year.
I agree.
Tennessee, Minnesota, LA Rams, no Aaron Donald, Raheem Morris
still bad.
gone.
I think it's still bad. Yeah.
Arizona, Houston could be a challenge. Jacksonville, Detroit, Chicago, San Fran, at least that's in Green Bay. Miami, they lost some guys. Detroit, Seattle, New Orleans, Minnesota, Chicago. It's good again though.
It is, especially in the back end, as you mentioned. A lot of those teams in the back end, again, looking pretty good. So, I don't know, man. Like I said, I think he's a polarizing player in fantasy, and it sounds such like a cop out, but I'm like right down the middle of Jordan Love. I think the talent's there. I think the schedule looks nice, especially on the back end, but. Again, as you know in fantasy football, man, you got to win those first 5-6 weeks, man.
That is true.
You can't sit back on these quarterbacks that late. Like, you can't wait for these guys to. You have to win the first 6 weeks,
right.
And then you got to play from a position of power. So
Real
I don't
quick.
know. Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think about comparing Love's situation, everything we just said, to Stroud? Because it's similar. Stroud was probably better on film. For the course of the season.
For sure.
But he's also getting a lot more love in fantasy. So there's the decision. Like, is he totally for real? If so, I'll pay this premium. But if I pay this premium and it turns out maybe a little bit of a step back in the sophomore year with all the tape on him, you could regret that. And Love could be the better pick.
I'm confused by the ADP for Stroud, and especially the ADP difference between Stroud and Jordan Love. I think they're very similar. The conglomerate ADP right now for Jordan Love is QB7, and the conglomerate ADP for CJ Stroud is QB13. That makes absolutely no damn sense whatsoever at all. So I don't know. We'll see. And it all depends on what site you go to. But I think overall, Stroud's a better prospect for fantasy and in real life than Jordan Love. And I would absolutely have CJ Stroud as a top 5 quarterback this season. And I think, again, when we get outside of the Josh Allens, Patrick Mahomes, and kind of, frankly, I think that's it. Like, I don't know. Where are we at with Jalen Hurts? Where are we at with Lamar Jackson? Lamar Jackson's seemingly running less and less as the years go on. Joe Burrow can't seem to stay healthy. I don't like the setup in Dallas for Dak Prescott. I don't know. I really like the upside here for CJ Stroud. As a matter of, I haven't done rankings yet for quarterbacks, but I don't know. CJ Stroud's definitely going to be in my top 5 for sure.
He's in mine, and he is up at fantasypoints.com. But again, you're looking at a bunch of different ADPs. I'm focusing maybe a little bit on Underdog, and Brian can promote Underdog too for people who want to get like basically a free subscription to Fantasy Points on Underdog. But Stroud is going off the board like 3+ rounds before Love, which at that point I prefer Love.
I think that's fair too. I think if we're talking about a 3-round ADP difference, I think that. Oh God! But you know what, man?
I mean, these are going to be 2 big decisions that really are going to affect fantasy drafts and seasons this year.
Let me ask you this, John: who's got more 5 touchdown games this season, Stroud or Love? And it might be neither. But I'm saying if we're talking about just chasing that underdog upside of like, give me that 5 touchdown game, who's it going to be? I think you have to say it's going to be CJ Stroud. I think with the running mentality there that they have there in Green Bay and with LaFleur, I don't know, man. You add Diggs to that mix, bro. Like, and Nico Collins is a certified baller, bro. It's just, come on, man. CJ Stroud could go absolutely ham sandwich this year.
I mean, the fact that he led the NFL interception rate as a rookie is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just going to be. I don't know. I think it's all wheels up for CJ, man. Like I'm in, I think he's going to improve.
Enough.
Well, if you guys are out there debating who to choose and you want to jump over to Underdog and make that selection and put your money where your mouth is, Well, how does free money sound? Use our code FANTASYPTS over at Underdog Fantasy. You're going to get a 50% deposit match up to $250 at Underdog to use on best ball drafts, pick'em contests, and more. Oh, by the way, when you use code FANTASYPTS at Underdog Fantasy, we're going to throw you a subscription to FantasyPoints.com for just $5. It's a $60 value, folks. You're going to get the rankings, the projections, all the articles, everything you need to dominate in fantasy football in 2024, simply for using our code FANTASYPTS over at Underdog Fantasy. Again, download the app, use code FANTASYPTS. I want to ask you guys right now about the Tennessee Titans. Now, this is an offense who stunk a year ago. We've got a brand new head coach, offensive coordinator, play caller here in Brian Callahan, okay? He'll take over a Titans offense who last year ranked dead last in plays per game, and they were 27th in pass rate. Conversely, the Bengals, where he came from, they were 17th in plays per game, 4th in pass rate at 64%, second to last in rush rate. So, gentlemen, I'll start with you, James. Where are we with this Will Levis-led offense? Tyjae Spears, a guy I know Guru's big on. Tony Pollard's new to Nashville. And now we've got Calvin Ridley in the mix. D-Hop, the ageless wonder, is still there on the outside. And Tyler Boyd in the slot. So a lot to like, theoretically, for Tennessee, James. But do we trust, number one, the play caller? And how the hell do we trust anything led by Will Levis?
First of all, let me just say this. I love Tennessee in terms of fantasy because I think you're getting discounts on all these guys, which is great. And again, you talk about, forget about Brian Callahan. Let's talk about his dad, right? The fact that his dad has come over, that offensive line is going to play a lot better. And I think we know this, right? From that standpoint alone, I like the running backs at cost. Right. So give me Tyjae Spears. I'm with Guru. I love the explosiveness. And to me, you want to come in with a good, decent depth at running back, and I don't think they overspent, to bring in depth either. But I think that Spears will be the leader in the clubhouse when season comes to close here. Maybe it's Pollard early, but I'm out on Pollard, man. I was never that big on Pollard to begin with. And, it's just, to me, I think he profiles as a really good backup running back. And I think we've seen that as the lead guy. Not so much. Spears, on the other hand, I think he can be an absolute guy, So you're asking me, do I like the Titans? Yeah, I freaking love the Titans because you're getting good discounts, I think, on ADP across the board. This is going to be a highly hyper-concentrated target share between Ridley and Nuke because other than, and again, I know Tyler Boyd's going to work out of the slot. I don't care. I don't care about Tyler Boyd. I think he has aged badly. I did not like what I saw on tape with Tyler Boyd last year. And I think Ridley and Nuke, I think they're going to see serious target share, highly concentrated, and that is what we love in fantasy. This is the thing I like about Will Levis too. Am I going to take him in fantasy? Probably not. He's a backup. I think he profiles as a backup quarterback in fantasy football. But the one thing, and again, we've got the Will Levis profile up on the Reception Perceptions site as well. He rarely throws it away. He almost never throws it away. And he's forcing a lot of throws. Is that good in real life? No, of course not. That's terrible in real life. But for fantasy,
he doesn't run a lot either, by the way. He doesn't
run a lot. He doesn't run a lot. He doesn't throw it away. So what does that tell you? He's forcing throws all day long. And if we know that the ball is going to Ridley or Nuke, you love that. You absolutely love that. Give these guys more opportunities to make plays. And more often than not, they're going to make them. I don't love Ridley. I still think he's, I don't think he found what he needed to find after being away from the game for 2 years. But he's a considerable step up as a wide receiver 2 for Tennessee right now. So yeah, I really like that combination of Ridley and Nuke, and I think both of those guys are going to eat. And similarly, I think Tyjae Spears is a really good value running back too.
They're a lot more interesting this year. That's for sure. I was a massive Spears guy last year, James. I don't know if you knew that, but man, major man crush. They don't always work out, as we know with Sky Moore. I got a whole lot of Sky Moore talk we could say for never. But I will say I'm a little worried about Brian Callahan and his father of course, Callahan Auto Parts. They did a great job with that company, but
wow,
he's never called plays. I'm glad you got that reference.
We were pulling some deep references.
There's a man over 40, but they never call plays. I do have some questions about, holes in Will Levis's game. Chiggy, we overrated Chiggy last year. These hybrid guys, man, they just don't do it. And I am a little worried about D-Hop testing positive for Geritol, but they are a lot more interesting.
No, I hear. I think overall, the offense will be better than last year. I don't think that's very hard to say because this offense was absolute trash last year. But again, rising tide lifts all boats. Will they be a top? By the way, and again, this is all based off of ADP. Like you're getting a huge discount on Spears. You're getting a huge discount on Pollard, on Nuke, on Ridley. And so you're not spending big capital on these guys. And for me, when you're talking to, I'm the sleeper king over here. It's like this Tyjae Spears is one of these guys that I really like to target in the middle portions of these drafts, maybe after round 9. I love Spears.
What my comp was, and it just came to me, and maybe if you want to nitpick it, go right ahead. But when I watched Spears and I saw him at the Senior Bowl for a week, I set up an interview with him. In my combine interviews, I annoy people with that, but hey, what the hell? I'm just trying to get information, and he was awesome. Poor man's Le'Veon Bell. The contact balance is unbelievable, man. And he's just got it, man. He's just got that certain je ne sais quoi. And he talked about it to me. He's like, yeah, man, I have these really good plays. And then we watched the film afterward, and the coaches always ask me, what was I thinking at this point? And he's like, I'm not thinking out there. I'm just reacting. So you love that.
I love the comp once he gets past the line of scrimmage. I think he runs very similar to Le'Veon Bell. I think the thing that made Le'Veon interesting and a more special player was his patience behind the line and finding that hole and then bursting through. And then also the hands. Totally. You just can't get past. The guy was literally LaDainian 2.0 when you threw him the ball, so
by the way, LaDainian Tomlinson, thanks for mentioning him. Sorry to cut you off here, but James Coe is superstar. LaDainian is committed to do this podcast in June. Yeah. So stay tuned for running back talk with LT. Sorry.
LaDainian's the best, bro. Again, of all the guys, of all the athletes and all the on-air people I met over at NFL Network, LaDainian, hands down, nicest dude. He is incredibly nice.
One of my all-time favorite human beings.
And one of my all-time favorite players, period. I think he's my favorite running back of all time. Is LaDainian Tomlinson.
Me too.
He was great. I loved him.
He changed fantasy football. He created third round reversal, because if you got LaDainian Tomlinson, you won the league.
Yeah, it wasn't fair.
It was really
you know what? I told him that, by the way. He had no idea.
That's funny.
One year I did a show with him once a week, 2-hour show on Sirius. And I'm like, you do know you freaking changed the whole game, dude. He's like, really? What the hell are you talking about? I was like, oh, wow, I did not know that. Yeah.
Especially for people playing in PPR back then. It was not fair. I remember it's like I went from a league that played PPR to not PPR because LaDainian was just so unfair. Wow. You're just like, nah, we can't play PPR because LaDainian's over here breaking the game. So we can't do that.
You are the sleeper king, and we're at an hour. I don't want to take up your whole day there, but let's pop out before we let you run here. Because doing television with James Coe, I'd sit there on the other side of the studio, and he'd go on live TV and throw out these names. I was like, damn, that's bold. That's a bold ass statement right there.
And I didn't care. Like the reason I'm the sleeper king is because I don't care if I'm wrong. We're
going it's Mo Alley Cox deep here. Like we're going real deep here, James. I don't know if you want to go that deep here, but that's your jam, going real deep. But what do you have?
It is. My one guy that I am planting a flag on, and I just think is going to be the bee's knees, man. I love this player, and it's Javon Baker there in New England. This is a guy that's going to go way late. He's probably not going to get drafted in a lot of spots, but Javon Baker to me in New England is, from a talent standpoint, is their best receiver. And again, I know that people are saying, wait, hold on. What about Jalen Polk? They spent more draft capital on Jalen Polk than they did on Javon Baker. I don't care. I watched a lot of Jalen Polk and I like him. I think he's a good player, but he's a guy. To me, Jalen Polk is somebody that can be a flanker wide receiver and a high quality flanker at that. Okay. But when you look at the makeup of this team in New England, they do not have an X receiver other than Javon Baker. They don't. There's no one. Kendrick Bourne's coming off of a major knee injury, and he, again, profiles the best as a flanker slot guy. Jalen Polk, flanker slot guy. They just don't have a certified X. And the only guy on this roster who is also just a certified freakazoid when it comes to winning the ball in the air, Javon Baker. Okay? Baker has a clear-cut role set out for him, and I think he's going to lead the wide receivers in snaps. I believe in the talent level, and I think he may lead the team in targets as well. Now you're saying, well, I don't really want a piece of that New England offense. And I buy that, and I get it. But that's why I'm saying this guy's going to go undrafted in some spots, man.
Oh, for sure.
Okay? So Javon Baker, to me, if we're looking deep, double-digit rounds, go ahead and give me that guy. He's an absolute dog. And for me, I've got him projected as having the best season of all the New England wide receivers. And until somebody takes me off of that, I got to see some off-season reports saying otherwise. But for me, this is a player that, I've got projected at 710 yards right now as a medium projection, but he can get up to 1050. And I think he leads the team in touchdowns as well. Anywhere between 5 to 7 touchdowns. So for me, if we're looking at a medium high projection, I'm looking at 800 yards and anywhere between 5 to 8 touchdowns. And that's what I really like in terms of a deep sleeper player that you're going to say to yourself, all right, I could play this guy in the flex, and every now and again, this guy's going to pop off for either a 100-yard game or give me a touchdown. That's Javon Baker.
Hey, that's a great take. I mean, this is what we're talking about, Brian. Nobody is out there really saying this, but James makes a lot of great points here. I mean, Douglas is a slot. Osborne is a jag. Rager is a never been. Thornton, Thornton was drafted by the Belichick regime. He stinks. Yeah, I like that. What else do you have, James? Do you have another one or two that was an interesting one?
One of the ones, another receiver that I'm kind of looking at late is A.T. Perry there in New Orleans. Again, they've moved on from Michael Thomas.
Market share,
I think
looking good.
The market share is looking great because if you look at the wide receivers, they just don't have that many. Chris Olave is obviously the dominant, wide receiver, and he's going to see a ton of looks, right? I've got him having a great season. 1,200 yards for Chris Olave is my projection, anywhere between 6 to 9 touchdowns for Olave this year. Rashid Shaheed is, and you know me, I listen, you know I love Rashid Shaheed.
Okay? Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, of course. Now, that being said, he is more of a shot player. You're taking shots.
He's a zone beater, oddly enough.
A beautiful zone beater, and you're taking shots with Rashid Shaheed. Okay, so but when we're talking about steady production as a flanker player, I think that's A.T. Perry. As a matter of fact, he's going to be the outside guy. So it's either flanker or X for A.T. Perry, and I think he can play there. And I think New Orleans is telling you he can play there because they didn't address that particular spot either in the draft or in free agency. They brought on Cedric Wilson, but Wilson's a guy. I think he's a depth player. I think A.T. Perry from a role standpoint and from a projected volume standpoint is really, really interesting. Again, another player that I'm projecting at 781 yards. It's not a huge number, but again, he can get up to 1,000. in terms of a high side projection, and median projections for touchdowns anywhere between 4 to 6. So A.T. Perry is somebody who, if we're chasing upside, he's got that 1,000-yard ceiling, and he's got about 6 to 7 touchdowns as an upside as well. I love this kind of player who, again, there ain't no way this dude is getting drafted before the 12th round in your normal draft. Okay. In most spots, again, undrafted is A.T. Perry. So when you're talking to Sleeper King and you want to get deep sleepers, these are the guys that I'm looking at.
Our guy,
A.T.
Brett
Perry
Whitefield,
right now. Wide receiver,
Okay.
96 on Underdog.
Oh, God.
He's going to
wow.
pick
Yeah, and our guy Brett
213.
Whitefield really
Let's
liked
go.
him. Brett Whitefield really
Let's
liked
go.
A.T. Perry. And I think you're right with everything you said. The question I would have is they did draft Bub Means. So I think I wrote somewhere. So unless Bub means business this year, of course we had to go there. It's a dad joke. But do you have any concerns about A.T. Perry? Perhaps a little route limitations? Is he running the complete route tree? To me, kind of seemed like a 9 route guy last year. I don't know if I saw much else from A.T. Perry. I mean, I'm sure it's a projection, but any thoughts there?
Again, we're hoping that he develops, right?
Yeah.
From when he was a prospect to kind of sort of where we're at right now with A.T. Perry. But I
Sure.
don't think his prospect profile was really that bad, you know? To me, and again, we're going back to his collegiate profile here, but on receptionperception.com, he had an 83% success rate on the slant. They run a lot of outside X slants there. In New Orleans, right? And that number's really good. We want good players to be over 80%. At 83% success rate in college, that's really good. 77.8% success rate on the curl route. Again, an in-breaking route. That's important, I think, for somebody like Derek Carr, right? So that's pretty good. So I think from his collegiate profile, he has enough on his tape that he can be somebody that can win as an outside X. 78.6% success rate on the post route here for A.T. Perry. Again, collegiate profile. So and I'm not trying to make it seem like he has a pristine profile. There's a reason why A.T. Perry didn't play last year. There's a reason why he went later in the draft, right?
Yeah, slipped a little bit.
Yeah, he really did, right? So it's not a perfect profile by any stretch of the imagination. But he does have, I think, some tools in the bag where you're saying to yourself, you know what? He can do some things at the NFL level that I don't think people are expecting. And so I do wonder, can he just win that starting job and hold on to it, man? Because I don't see clear competition for snaps against A.T. Perry. Now, listen, he's going to work into a rotation because, again, he's not just a perfect prospect. But if we're chasing that upside, that's the kind of profile I'm looking for.
And if you draft him and he doesn't do well, don't add him. Get it? Get it? Another dad joke coming at you.
No, listen,
here,
I'm calling it. So my nickname for him is AT Phone Home Perry. Okay. That's what I'm going with. AT Phone Home.
Yeah. Well,
and they've got to find somebody
I do
there.
I do my ET with Zeke Elliott. I go, Elliott. That's my ET reference there.
There you go. Perfect.
I had a buddy of mine send me I'm sure you've seen the video of the Stone Cold Steve Austin ET at the McDonald's drive-thru, where there's if not, you have to. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
It's a guy doing a Stone Cold Steve Austin impression with an ET mask on in a drive-thru, talking about ET Stone Cold wants a double cheeseburger. It's a whole thing.
Doesn't he flip around though, and the other side of him is Hulk Hogan? Or is that
we're going to go down a great rabbit hole here. I've got to ask before we let you go, being a wrestling fan, were you happy with the way WrestleMania broke out, putting the strap on Cody Rhodes, and where does he go from here?
So I was not interested in pro wrestling for years until this whole Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, The Rock thing popped up on my timeline. And I'm like, what is this? This is awesome. This looks amazing. The Rock as a true villain, absolutely carried so much of that, and he just played it spot on, like the final boss, all that stuff, man. Like it was great, man. Like that whole rivalry I thought was beautiful. It feels like it's been a little bit of a letdown after that. I really want to see more of a Roman, like build out the whole villainy between Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. And like, let's try to get Roman the strap back in like a real, heel turn type of way. That would have been great. I know The Rock's got other things he's got to get done. But it would have been perfect from a wrestling perspective to have The Rock continue on as a heel and continue that storyline for another year. That would have been freaking perfect. But it feels like a lot of the air has been kind of sort of let out of the balloon. By the way, wasn't it like really weird? I think it was the Monday night after that where The Rock gave him some secret note and said, what's on the, I'm like, what is this? This is weird. Like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, you had this heated rivalry, perfect face, perfect heel. And then now it's like The Rock's trying to become more of a face again. Like, what? What's going on? Like, it doesn't make sense. I don't know.
He gave him some old dusty cufflinks is the story there.
Sure.
It'll be great.
Whatever.
When Cody turns and he has this phenomenal heel run in a year, it'll be outstanding. I think John is sitting here, he's like, what happened to this show? We got to get Kaplan out here talking pro wrestling.
I have a lot of friends in this space, you guys included, Paul, Kelly, who are really into wrestling. My line is, I used to absolutely love wrestling, but something did happen to me. I turned 9 and I realized that it was bullshit, and I started watching real sports. But I respect you guys. I know it's soap operas for dudes, right?
Damn. I thought you were going to say turned 18. I thought you were going to say I got
9.
kids.
That's
now
actually
9.
true.
Damn.
Yeah, it actually is true. Like when I turned 9, I started to understand. Now I think I know what's going on this football field here. Because for 2 years, I'm like, I don't know what's going on, honestly.
No, this is, John, the problem is that you're a little bit older than us. I think you're about 10 years older than us, right? So, like, you missed the Attitude Era. That's the problem. And if you were a teenager growing up in the Attitude Era and the whole NWO storyline, there is no way. It was a cultural phenomenon for high school boys, man. Like, it's impossible to have gotten away from it,
Look. Again, I respect a lot of people who are really into it. And again, I was really, really into it, but we're talking old school here. I'm talking Bobby Backlund. I was a big Tony Gurria guy, Larry Zbyszko, Neil
You're talking
you're living legend.
You're not even talking WWF. You're going NWA wrestlers right now. What?
That's right. Now, I will say I used to do television. I don't know if you guys know these guys, ECW, the Blue Meanie and Stevie Richards.
Oh, sure. So
we got to get Brian on the show.
The Blue
we should get the
Beanie's
Blue
into fantasy
Meanie on,
football.
maybe.
Yeah. He's into big time into fantasy football for sure.
I know your twins graduate next week from high school. My graduation cap was, you have the cap, it's black, and there's the button with the long tassel. I had Triple H doing the crotch chop, and I put it perfectly on the little beanie with the tassel there of Triple H, and then I had an NWO sticker on there as well. So and I have a winged eagle belt over my shoulder here behind me. So it's
I see it now. Oh, I didn't see it before. I see it now. That's amazing. Yeah, let's go.
Blue Meanie, a Philly guy, used to come on this TV show that I actually kind of started. That we used to do this big, started the career with this big Super Bowl show. It was kind of like public access, but we're on like all the cable systems. But they used to come on, and we were wild. Like I literally drank beer live on this show.
Love it.
And I have a video of the Blue Meanie doing hoagie wrestling in a kiddie pool in the studio with strippers. Okay. It is absolute gold. Okay.
Wow.
Gold. So maybe we'll reach out to the Blue Meanie and get him on.
I love it.
We'll get the whole BWO, Stevie Richards, Nova. It'll get wild on here, guys.
Wow. We're pulling some references over here.
Stevie was cool, man. Stevie was kind of the man. He was the man. I love me some Stevie.
What a weird gimmick that guy had. I'm going to come on TV with cut off booty shorts, and I'm going to wrestle my ass off. Like, what?
It works.
This is what we're doing here. This is incredible.
Tip of the cap, though. He pulled it off.
Yeah, exactly. He did pull it off. Good for you.
We're going to Stevie kick our way into next week. And we just want to thank our guest, James Coe. Again, follow him on the social media platforms at James D. Coe. Check out the great podcast he does with Matt Harmon, Reception Perception. John, we learned a lot today, man. What a great guest. Love hearing about your beer drinking stories. I got to get down to Georgia when you move, and you and I got to have a weekend of debauchery, and maybe we invite James, and we'll just, the party will never end. But James, thanks so much for coming on the Fantasy Points podcast, man. We appreciate it, brother.
All right, boys. I can't wait to come back. And anytime you guys need a guest, please bring me back on, man. I love working with John, and he's really been the best. And yeah, man, I did. Listen, bro, I miss these post Sunday beers, dude. Okay, I'm getting your boy over here is getting a little thirsty. Okay, so we might have to figure out a way.
Hell. Nobody talked to me on Sunday nights around the house. I mean, very lonely.
Dude, I
miss my boy.
Come on, guy.
But yeah, right back at you. It was great to chop it up with you, and we'll do this again here right when we're at crunch time.
I love it, man. All right, talk soon.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on the Fantasy Points podcast. We'll see you next time.